Thank you for staying with us in New Central Television. If you're just joining, this is Secure the Continent. We've been looking at the renewed escalations of violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We still have on the panel Dr. David Matsanga, Global Affairs Analyst, joining from London, and also Gideon Beleke, political analyst, who's joining us live from Toronto in Canada. Now, Gideon, we've been having this discussion before we went to break on the withdrawal of MONUSCO and the East African Intervention Force. What's your take on it? And how much of a vacuum would it leave? And do you think that the DRC will be able to conduct elections in the Eastern DRC? Will the government in Kinshasa be able to conduct elections in the Eastern DRC, looking at the volatility of this region and also the vacuum that might be left following the departure of this regional and United Nations forces?
Well, the MONUSCO has overall failed as a mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They have more than 2 decades now being present in the DRC, but they are unable to provide peace to the security. The mission is to protect the civilians and to make sure they are all safe and secure. But look at the numbers of people who've died during the 2 decades. So apparently the mission became other missions. It's had now new objectives. And that's why we're calling for the withdrawal of the MONUSCO, because they have failed to secure the peace in the DRC. And I don't think their presence whenever they leave, if it will make any difference, because they have overall failed as a mission. And I think now it's time for Congolese to take responsibility of their own future, their own security. At the end of the day, we will not continue to wait for security of our country to be guaranteed by external actors.
Yeah, but Gideon, sorry to interrupt you, Gideon. The issue is this: the Congolese, the FARDC, the Congolese Armed Forces, that they have the capacity to keep the peace in such a vast country.
They do have a capacity. They do have a capacity if they are equipped and they are enabled to do so. And there is a reform going on within the army. That's a good thing, but we have to maximize on that. We have to bet more on that, And we need a capable leadership to accelerate that process, because the Congo as a country cannot continue to rely on external forces for its security or for the security of its civilians. It's unsustainable, and it's costly for ourselves and for our citizens. Secondly, the East African community, they've entered into the DRC. They established these so-called buffer zones. But since the establishment of buffer zones, killing continued. The M23 continued to capture territory. And we were like, what type of missions are they conducting if they can stop the M23 terrorist organization? Actually, we shouldn't talk about the M23, because the only M23 known is a political party. The other M23 we're talking about here is a proxy branch of the Rwandese Defense Forces. So it's a proxy war being imposed on the Congo by the Kigali's regime. Mr. Paul Kagame, he's conducting a war on aggression on the DRC. Just the same thing happening in the Middle East, the same thing happening between Russia and Ukraine. It's the same nature, and we have to deal with things as they are, And the other problem with the East African regional forces is the fact that they brought even protagonists. People who are causing conflict, you bring them as peacekeepers. That was a miscalculation from the Tshisekedi regime. We oppose that, and unfortunately, they end up forcing it. But now they are seeing clearly the results. These people weren't able to secure our civilians. These people weren't able to protect the Congolese people. And I think that regardless of any pessimism people can have, the security of the Congo can only be guaranteed by the Congolese themselves. It's now time to coalesce around that. It's now time for young people to voluntarily join massively the army so that we could defend our own nations, because it's like everyone is against the country and we can't continue to bet on external forces. It's now time to take charge and accept, the fates of the future.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Now, back to you, Dr. David Matsanga. You're an experienced peace negotiator. Hello, Dr. Matsanga, are you there? Okay, Dr. Ojewale, we've seen, I mean, this conflict has not been happening in a vacuum. It's not like people aren't trying to do something about it. They've tried the kinetic, that is deploying UN peacekeepers and also the East African forces, but it doesn't seem to be working. So having looked at the non-kinetic ways, negotiations and having peace accords. Let's talk about one of them that they attempted, the Luanda process. How has it evolved and its implementations? And are there other non-kinetic means to bring this conflict in the Eastern DRC to an end? Is it even possible to use those means to stop the violence? Non-military means?
Yes, all wars end on negotiation table. And I can't rule out the fact that even though the context of the DRC is the fight about new wars, which is not the regular interstate war, I think the sophistication of the different armed groups, which also have political leanings and ideology, implies that the state must humble itself and find a means to probably explore the option of peace agreement. But, the challenge with the DRC is the fact that there have been multiple peace agreement upon peace agreement that has never seen the light of the day in terms of implementation. And that is the reason why someone like me might be disposed to looking at a full-fledged security response. But like I said, I've not seen that capability on the part of the country in terms of the military capability to take on about 131 armed groups in the country. It's like a franchise that continue to evolve into different franchises, and then there are also times that they negotiate and come together waging war against the state. So whether it is the Luanda agreement, the Lusaka agreement, the fact that for over 2 decades, this has been a protracted experience implies that there is possibly more to what we can see on the surface. And it's the role of the external actors in this regard. I keep emphasizing the fact that everybody has seen the DRC as a grant to pillage resources, a grant to tap into resources through illicit means. And it is in their own interest that they keep their country in this perpetual state of instability to be able to extract rents illicitly from the country. So what I have not seen, and I quite agree with Gideon, I believe that solution to the crisis in Congo will come from Congo. But the challenge is we have not seen a leader that is committed to the country, a leader that is taking his eyes out of the patronage system, whether being doled out to some elites, some cartels, and even to some armed groups, that is actually going to provide leadership. For all intent and purpose, look, people have indicted some countries around that corridor. There is none that should be able to take on DRC in terms of, if you look at what you consider as national assets, if they've actually been optimized in that country. How can smaller countries around that region be taking on DRC with all that the country has at its disposal? But this is where we find ourselves. This is the reality. The country has not been able to muster and take advantage of that resources and actually develop the people and develop the country to the point that they can actually defend themselves. So you've had leaders who are genuflecting to the left and to the right, pretending that they are finding solution to the crisis of the country. But in the real sense of it, they are also looking for places where they can also extract rent from the state, extract resources from the state, and use that to negotiate with actors that are actually oppressing the country. So, like I said, a lot of reports, a lot of UN reports, a lot of books, a lot of journal articles, a lot of meetings have been conducted in DRC. But the challenge is that the ideas have always been foreign imposed ideas. Those ideas are not generated from the people. Those ideas do not get the full backing and full political will on the part of the government to provide solutions to the crisis. So for me, I don't think the country can, because if you start the process of negotiating, how many armed groups are you going to negotiate with? That's where the challenge.
There are quite a lot of them, and you don't expect over 100 plus to respond. But I want you to respond to what Gideon said earlier. He did say, when I asked him specifically, that as the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo have the capacity to respond to this violence, and his answer was an emphatic yes. But he said they do need some level of support to enhance its capacity. What do you make of, the African community, the African Union, or foreign intervention to give the Congolese armed forces arms? Would it solve this problem and help boost their capacity in terms of arms and also intelligence sharing, so that they can deal with this issue of rebels once and for all? Are they that disciplined?
The challenge with the setup in terms of trying to look at solutions from maybe African communities, the fact that none is really sincere. The people you want to run to are also extracting rent from the country. And the fact that the sheer conversation about the global state of conflict across the world has neglected the crisis in Congo tells you that nobody's really interested in looking at the direction of providing solution to the Republic of Congo. I'm going to give you one example. In the recent time, you have seen Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, on the global stage trying to project South Africa as probably the powerhouse of Africa in terms of international diplomacy and engagement. So Cyril Ramaphosa flew from South Africa. He flew over DRC. He flew over Sudan, and he was going to Egypt to negotiate peace between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Palestine. So nobody's talking about what is happening in the DRC. You can't look in the direction of these people, whether it is M7 or Kagame or anybody. I've not seen that commitment on their part. And it appears what happens in Congo, hence in Congo.
I mean, this is a very sad picture you just painted. It's almost like Congo is on its own.
That is it. It's like Congo is on its own, and then what Congo lacks sorely now is a leader that can rally around the country, is a leader that can provide leadership and take responsibility for the crisis in the country. We are talking about conflict here. Let me tell you another dimension. There are people living in Goma who for the rest of their life, whether they live for 80 or 90 or 60 years, they will never see Kinshasa. Why? There is no infrastructure leading that region to other parts of the country. There is gross governance deficit, which the armed groups are also feasting on to wreak havoc and create an unstable environment for peace and prosperity to thrive. So there is a whole lot of problems in terms of political negotiation in the country, how power is being shared, how power is being assessed to actually provide governance to the people. That is lacking. And the fundamental objective of government is to provide security and improve the welfare condition of the people. So if we're talking about security here, that is not the only thing that hails Congo. There is gross governance deficit across the country that nobody is addressing. And you cannot wait on external actors to come and do that for you. African Union is not going to do it. No neighboring country is going to do it. It is the Congolese that can solve their own problem by themselves. That is the crisis that we have at hand in the DRC. And if you tie this to the issue of the question that you asked about capability of the army, I refuse to be convinced that the country has the military capability to deal with 131 insurgent group in the country. I have not seen that. And it beholds the government of the country to actually focus on full-scale security sector reform that can respond to some of these challenges that we're talking about. In fact, some part of the country, it is very difficult to wage a guerrilla warfare against the armed group because government has not actually invested in infrastructure that is going to hit such operation over the years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joale. Gideon, as we begin to wrap up, I want you to have the final say on this. And this very difficult question. What do you think are the most challenging obstacles to achieving a lasting peace in the Eastern DRC? This is your country. And can you share insights into innovative approaches or strategies to overcome these challenges? How can we have lasting peace in the Eastern DRC?
Well, first and foremost, I want to mention something clear. The malfunction within the army is a result of the poor governance of the country. We have to acknowledge that we are at a stage where our governance has been poor for many years. Since 1960, we've been having extractive governance that doesn't allow the country to move into proper directions. And right now, what we see is the accumulation of those neglected small conflicts that are now produce all these major wars that are affecting millions and millions of Congolese. So the only way forward is to fix the government. The country needs a proper leadership. We need to restructure the way the country works. We are in front of what I call a systematic vicious cycle that doesn't allow the country to move forward. So we are just turning around, conflict to conflict, and nothing seems to move around. The infrastructural problems, all those are the results of the failure of governance. Until we fix our governance, until we fix our leadership, I fear that we continue to languish into all this sort of pauperism that affects millions and millions of Congolese, and that is actually sacrificing the generation of those Congolese who are to come in the future. So it's up to those who are willing to support the Congo, to support the implementation of a good leadership, pragmatic leadership that is able to put the country on right track and to put it in a trajectory of dignity and prosperity.
Thank you very much for your analysis, Gideon Peleke. I also like to say thank you to the rest of the panel, Dr. David Misanga, and also Dr. Wale Ojewale. It was a pleasure speaking with you all on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now, to achieve lasting peace in the Eastern DRC, a multifaceted approach is imperative. This approach should involve inclusive dialogues that engage all stakeholders, demilitarization to disarm and reintegrate armed groups, robust development programs to address socio-economic grievances, governance and security sector reforms, to establish effective institutions and international support and regional cooperation to ensure long-term stability. Additionally, addressing external involvement in historical grievances while promoting accountability for past atrocities, a key element of a comprehensive strategy to provide for lasting peace in the Eastern DRC. Thank you for watching, but remember to stay safe and alert at all times. I am Benga Aboroa. See you next time on Secure the Continent. Bye-bye.